control, and calm. I feel like these are 3 areas I'm seeing deficits in across all age groups. Obviously not across all students, but some for sure. And I think all students could benefit in working on improving skills in at least one of these areas. Go ahead, Anjanae, can I move them or do you move them? Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to talk about building control, consistency, and calm. I want to talk about how do we build those in our kids? How do we get our kids being more self-controlled and having more consistent behavior, and then obviously being more calm? So building self-control through structure. The structure of your home environment can really help with your child to gain some of these skills. Establishing 3 to 5 family rules that are age appropriate across your family can be very helpful for building some self-control practice. So giving your child 3 to 5 expectations. In our family, these are our expectations, these are our rules, and that's a great starting point to practice these skills. If the child can explain your expectations, the consequence for breaking those rules, the rewards for following those rules, this is a great way for them to start understanding self-control and understanding that there are consequences, positive or negative, for having self-control or for losing self-control. Whenever you see behavior in your home that goes against those rules, refer back to them like, oh, what's the family rule about that? And what does it say? And maybe even having them posted so your child has to read that as part of that, correction, and reviewing those rules so that they are really coming back to that structure every time you're seeing behavior that you don't like or that really counteracts with that expectations you've established. So making sure that those rules are not too many of them. I've seen people establish family rules, family values, family models, which are so great, but I've seen like lists and lists and lists. And when I ask children of that family, hey, can you tell me your family rules? They typically can tell me 1 or 2. They definitely can't tell me all 10 that are on the list, even if they're hung up. So just like 3 to 5, something they can memorize. We're not going to address every single expectation we have as a family or every single value that we have as a family in these rules. It's just a jumping off point to really work on some non-negotiables that we think are really important for our family that could be a great way to start building this executive functioning skill. When you're giving instructions in your home, when you're giving directions in your home, or giving a demand, right, a request, demand to the child, keeping those concise and very clear, keeping them short. So I'm not giving like 3-step instructions to a younger child. I'm keeping those age appropriate as far as how many steps I'm giving or what the instruction is or how clear it is. And then expecting them to follow through, expecting them to comply to that instruction, but also making sure that there are rewards or reinforcement for compliance or following rules or following instructions in the home. I know that there are homes that are structured in a way where compliance is just expected and following the rules is just expected. There's not any payout really attached to that. And that can create more of a negative or punitive home because it's likely that breaking rules will result in a consequence. And so, there is that structure in place typically because that's more natural for all of us is that a breaking of a rule is going to result in possibly like a talking to a lecture or some sort of chore or punishment or removal to their bedroom, something like that. And so if the flip side isn't happening, if there isn't a reward attached to actually following those rules, then that can create a really negative or punitive structure in the home because we're not really we're not really positively trying to create a happy reason to follow those rules, a really exciting and positive feel. for why those rules are in place. And I know that all of us as adults, we were like, those rules are in place such intrinsic reasons, right? For building all these skills and for safety and for keeping our family peaceful and in harmony. But those are a little bit beyond maybe where our kids are in their brain development. And so a more tangible reward for them, or maybe an activity reward, something the family's earning together to go do, or a fun, any sort of fun activity or that can be maybe attached to a certain amount of time for that child for following the rules, can make it a more positive experience and can also increase this learning. We want this to be a teaching and training environment, right? That's what our homes are, is getting them ready for the world, getting them ready for adult life. This is a teaching and training opportunity. And so creating that reward for a certain amount of time that a child can go following those rules. So, hey, if you're successful in following these family rules and really trying, then there's a reward available. For K through 2 age group, the reward should probably be by the end of the day. They could go a whole day trying to follow those rules. They're not going to be perfect, and they're going to require reminders or warnings to get back on track. They might break a rule, require a little bit of a reminder. Oh, hands to self is one of our family rules. I really need to see you following that. That's important for our family to stay safe and happy. I'm watching for you, but remember, by the end of the day, you really need to be following that. So a reward by the end of the day is really age appropriate for them. 2nd grade to 4th, I put 2nd on both of these levels because it really kind of depends on the maturity level of your child and their executive functioning skills, their impulse control skills. So 2 through 4 could maybe even go a bit longer. They could do something like a reward at the end of the week. They're building towards, if I'm following the rules for 4 or 5 days, 6 days, there's something bigger maybe, but at the end of the week that's available. Maybe it's a date night with mom or dad. I get to pick dessert that night, or maybe I get to pick a game and we play it, something like that. And then 5 through 7 is it's age appropriate for them to have a reward at the end of the month, something they're working towards that's a little bit bigger. This also helps because oftentimes smaller rewards are not super motivating to the older kids, to 5 through 7. They're not going to want a little prize out of a prize box or maybe a little treat. That's not motivating by that age. And so they're going to want, larger things. And so it's appropriate that they have to work harder or longer to gain the rewards that they're more interested in.
Brynn?
Any questions? Yeah.
Looks like we have a question from Ashley.
Perfect. Is it in the chat?
Okay.
Pull up the chat.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Can you hear me? When
Yes.
you're
Yes.
so when you're going through like the K through 3rd grade or whatever, can you give us like some examples of like a couple of rules that you would say like that you would put in place for those age groups as you're going through it?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Great question. So because you're going to have different ages for your whole family, the family rules would be consistent across all ages K through 7. That might mean that they're pretty simplistic for your 5th, 6th, 7th graders, but it's important that for family unity, we all have the same rules. So maybe my family rules sound a little bit juvenile. Maybe one of my family rules is in our family, we have safe bodies. We keep our hands to ourselves and our touching is kind. That's really long. That would be my, the one I made them read that's on the wall when they get in trouble. But I would have a shorter, quick rule of safe body. Like, we have a safe body in our family. Our touching is kind. We keep our hands to self otherwise. So even though your rules can be pretty simplistic and down to the lower level of your younger kids, it still needs to be, and it's still going to be things that you're seeing your older kids struggle with as well. Oftentimes, for most families I work with, that's appropriate touch because there's a lot of hitting or just pushing or wrestling or teasing, those kind of things. And then typically they're related to compliance to instruction or obedience to the parents or caregivers. And so something along the lines of, like, we do what mom and dad say in our family. And even attaching, I like to attach a little sentence as to why. Like, we do, in our family, we do a mom and dad stay so that we can be safe and happy in our home. You know, a little reason why, not just, you know, we do what mom and dad say because they're the boss, not because I said so. So you don't have to have your rules be really, really age appropriate or different per age group. The rules can really be concise and clear and basic and simple all the way from K to 7. They don't need to be more complex as your kids get older. We know their behavior gets more complex, but the rules can be very simple, very basic, all along those grades. A third example would be we tell the truth in our family. We are honest. You know, we don't lie. We don't tell stories. We don't blame others inappropriately. You know, if we didn't, and you can work through learning these at family nights or family meetings, going through each rule maybe one at a time and talking about what does that mean. That if you didn't see someone do it, you know, it would be dishonest to say that they did it when you don't really know if they did or not. You know, that would be an inappropriate blaming. So, you know, in our family, we're honest. That's a rule. Anyone else? I'm sure some of you have established family rules. Do any of you have any other examples? Let's go back to Janae for me. Okay, thanks. Okay, and feel free to email me after this anytime at all if you want to work together to brainstorm some family rules or some behavior you're seeing in your home and how we can attach that to a rule or establish, you know, a clear family set of expectations that can maybe address some of the things you're seeing. So the expectations can be the same across your kids, no matter what age they are. However, the reward needs to probably change to motivate, right? A little kid's prize box $1 is going to motivate maybe my second grader down first in K, but it's not going to motivate my sixth grader. So you better work with each individual kid specifically on reinforcement and what that's going to look like for their age. And also, it's not super appropriate for me to expect my seventh grader to just follow the rules for one day to get a big allowance or maybe some money, you know, because they can go longer than that. And, you know, it's kind of up to your child's abilities. And so, you know, a week might be an okay place to start for them. We're building some of that, that inhibition, that being able to work towards something that's further out. Okay, I'm going to move on to consistency. Feel free to email me if you have anything you want to work through individually on your family as well. Make sure you're tying expectations and praise back to the rules each time. So each time I express that maybe I'm disappointed in what's happening in my car or right now in front of me while they're playing or whatever, or at the dinner table, I'm going to tie it back to those rules. Those rules are expectations. So, oh gosh, you know, hey, you're yelling in the car. I'm trying to drive. It's really unsafe. And we have a rule in our family that we have safe bodies. So is your mouth being safe right now? So just tying it back to those expectations. Remember, a rule in our family is this. So why am I seeing this behavior from you? That's really not appropriate. That's against our rules or whatever. And then also tying praise back to it. I really like what I'm seeing. I see that you're following our family rule that is, you know, to be honest, or, you know, I really like the communication of you being open and telling us these things, because open communication is one of our family rules. So tying that phrase back to the rule every time. We're pretty good, I think, as parents, tying behavior back to our expectations and our rules. But sometimes we forget to tie praise and what we're seeing that's good back to those rules, which I think really helps in this training to help them understand, what do I mean by safe hands? What do I mean by being honest or open in our communication? What do I mean by following instructions or being compliant or obedient? And each time or as many times as you can catch them doing those things, tying it back to that rule can really help clarify, especially for your younger kids, what that rule really means and what exactly that behavior is that we're expecting. Make sure that you only structure routines or earning programs or checklists that you can be highly consistent with running and following through on. If it's super complex, if it's super taxing on a parent, I don't know that it's going to be consistent, and it's better probably to not implement something that's going to be here or there and not really consistent. I believe it's better to just be very simplistic. If I can run a really simple program or consistent routine in my home and be consistent with it, that's better than these complex ones you'll see on Pinterest that are a big board, lots of different changes that you have to make to all the lists, and lots of different pieces and moving components to this program. Those can be pretty difficult to be consistent on. So just know yourself, think about your personality, your executive functioning, and make sure you're, establishing something that works for you, not your neighbor's family or someone else's family, because knowing myself, I can't run those really complex programs in my home consistently. They dwindle after a while. And so I know that I am more successful in keeping things really simple. And that would mean, like, here's our rules. If you follow them through the day, maybe there's dessert available to you after dinner. If you haven't followed them, dessert is not available today to you. So something simple like that is more up my alley. But just knowing yourself, making sure that you're implementing those things that you can be consistent on, I think that's really important. And then working to respond consistently each time to behavior. So this allows you also to have almost a scripted response every time you see behavior in your home you don't like, or behavior in your home you do like. But behavior in your home you don't like can sometimes obviously increase our emotions, and then our response becomes emotional or inconsistent. One day maybe I'm stressed, and so my response is bigger and louder and more upset, and the next day the same behavior gets maybe ignored. And so consistency on our part is super important to teach self-control. And so working towards that scripted response of, hey, this is our family rule, please read it for me. I see that what you're doing is breaking the family rule. I see that you're hitting, that's not a safe body. What's our family rule? So having yourself know ahead of time a scripted response that's going to be consistent, that you can respond each time a behavior occurs, is really helpful to eliminate some of that emotional response. When you're busy, you're stressed, you're doing other things, and you're frustrated that you even have to respond to this behavior. But if you know what the response is, it's a lot less thought producing. It's a lot less brain space for me, and so that makes it a little bit easier to respond consistently and less emotionally and more appropriately as a parent. Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Anjanae. I keep talking about skills that I want to be targeted in the home. These are because, like I said, in school we have a lot of opportunities to practice these skills, but they're not necessarily targeted in the sense that we don't have classes where we are teaching these skills directly. We're not saying, hey guys, welcome to planning class. We're going to teach you how to plan and sequence, how to break down a task and work into steps, break it into steps, and then decide where to begin. We're not necessarily sitting the kids down and saying, hey, we're going to have a class today on how to be aware of your body, notice your body, look at what it's doing, and what your behavior does and consequences it brings you in your environment. So these are things that are practiced. They're definitely practice skills in the school environment, and that's why I think it's so important that kids be in a classroom, is a lot of these skills are really naturally embedded in the structure of a classroom. So they're practicing these a lot. They're gaining these skills. However, I think if you notice any of these on the list that your child is struggling with, it would be really helpful to target some of these, to say, you know, maybe we're going to pick one and we're going to set a goal and we're going to consciously and intentionally work on it. So we're going to sit down with that child and really say, what does that look like? And how do we do some real learning about what that is and how it looks for them in their world? What does it look like in their bedroom or in their schoolwork or in their backpack or in their friendships? And then how do we work on it? Maybe we even set a goal with them on, hey, I've noticed that for you, let's set a goal to work on this, you know, and spend time together 10 minutes a day and work on this. Or let's set a goal to, we're gonna set a timer and practice this using an activity twice a week, you know, or we're gonna set a goal to get better at this, and here's what I want to see with your backpack. You and I are going to work together on your backpack. Let's set a goal to get better on organization or something like that. So if you guys at home could target some of these skills, it's a long list. It's a long journey. These are skills that are executive functioning. You know, that really doesn't develop fully in the brain until in your 20s. So these are things that are going to be a long time. But if you can target maybe just one with your child intentionally, they're going to build that skill a lot faster. Go ahead, Anthony. Why are these skills important? I'm sure we all realize these are very important adult skills and they're going to help them out so much in the future. But I just wanted you to know, there is a lot of research showing that these skills are really, really important and valuable. These are just a couple of the most recent research that I identified, but there are quite a bit of research studies out there that show that executive functioning skills appear to predict how well a child does later in life much better than IQ. So keeping in mind that your child's natural abilities, your child's intelligence level is not necessarily as important to predict future success as is these executive functioning skills. What that says to me, which I love, is that kids can be successful because these are skills, not qualities you're born with, not natural ability, not intelligence, skills, right? We can build skills. We can work on skills. Every child can be successful if we are working on these skills. These really are more important to predict, you know, that success later on in school and in life. So these are really great to work on it, and I hope like kids at every level can really improve in these skills and do well. No, thank you. Okay, I know we're low on time, so I'll go through this just really quickly, but I wanted to talk about if you see problem behavior in your, specifically with one of your kids, something that's really a concerning problem behavior that you want to target, keep in mind that you will not be teaching a replacement behavior. So I think we're really good as parents in saying, hey, we're going to target that behavior. Like we're really good at correcting behavior. None of that. We don't like that you're hitting, or that, you know, the fact that you're lying is very concerning. We're always targeting those with our kids. We're correcting those. But sometimes we're not providing them a replacement behavior. Oftentimes a replacement behavior is just really what we'd rather see. Like I would just rather see open, honest communication from you. But the problem with that, especially with our older kids, the problem with that is that it's probably not going to get the same result, right? If lying gets me something, if lying gets me more freedom or more privilege outside of the home because I'm lying about where I am or something, being open and honest is going to shut that down. So that's not a great replacement behavior. A replacement behavior is different than just like our ultimate behavior we want from this child. Or a replacement behavior is what is the behavior that I can teach that's going to allow you to access some of what you want, but in a better way. So just thinking about your child's problem behavior, make sure you're identifying what the child can do to get that same thing. Right? If a child throws a tantrum to get out of doing the dishes, you know, maybe we need a replacement behavior for what that child can do to negotiate how the dishes are done, or what that child can do to take a break for the dishes, what that child can do to delay the dishes a little bit. of functional skills like communication or asking or talking it over with me. So a functional skill that maybe you can be teaching that child to do instead. So I know this is a little bit confusing and complex. Replacement behavior gets a little bit complicated, but just something that I think everyone should think about is we are wanting pro-social behavior from our kids. We're wanting you to just do the dishes without a problem, or be honest and open in communication with me, or keep your body safe. Those are pro-social behaviors. Those are going to be a longer journey. As we work on those, and we're always working on those, we're always working towards them and training our kids towards those. But as we work towards those really high functioning behaviors, we need to figure out a replacement behavior we're going to accept from this kid, and we need to talk to that child about it. Like, look, instead of this, why don't you just ask me this, and then I will allow you to have, that with grace as we work towards fully you just handling this with a mature response. Any questions on that? Okay, awesome. Okay, go ahead and to the next one. Routines are really important to establish these skills of self-control and consistency, teaching your child how to be consistent themselves, how to be consistent people, and how to have self-control. Routines are really important. A sleep routine is really important. A lot of parents will most parents, I think, would tell me, we have a sleep routine, we have a certain bedtime. The surprising thing is, however, that most students I work with can't tell me what that is. They're pretty much unable to tell me what their sleep routine is, what their bedtime routine is, what their bedtime is. So you may have a great established routine that you really are in charge of and you really direct and make happen. So just thinking about how can your child be more actively owning that routine, actively involved in that routine? Do they know their bedtime? Are they watching the clock at all? Are they taking any responsibility for winding down? Are they taking any responsibility for when that routine needs to begin? Or for what they need to start doing to take those first steps of that routine? It's important that they be more active in their routines, play a more active role in taking some ownership and responsibility and accountability for those routines. The structure we've kind of talked about today, but take time to work through those changes, establishing rules and really following through on earning or punishment kind of structure. If it's not been in place in this specific way before, it's going to take a week or two of some resistance before, everyone gets on board and starts understanding. So anytime you change the routine or you say, listen, this is how we're going to do things, we're going to start having a more structured way of doing this, or an earning program or a consequence here, don't give up, keep working through, because it is going to take a couple weeks for some of that resistance and tantruming to go down. Be intentional with your structure, make it visual, write it down. I think we all kind of in our head kind of know the routine of our day and some of the structure of what is a consequence in our home for breaking, for engaging in bad behavior, but I don't know that our kids know it. A lot of the concern I have is when I talk to kids, they can't vocally explain these things. And I'd like them to be able to. I think they should be at a place where they should be able to tell you what the family rules are, what they get if they follow those, what happens if they don't, what happens at night and what's their bedtime. And so being intentional about that structure, really planning it, making it visual, and having them involved in that. I want to talk really quickly about touch. It's kind of a random one I threw in here, but it's really important to have a touch routine. This has become a very big concern for some of the cases I'm working with students in our school. Is that there's a lot of maybe touching peers or wanting to poke or be close to, or just spatial issues, invading space, really struggling with some of that. And when I break it down and really help try to understand their routine at home, I don't hear from a lot of these kids that there's a lot of touch happening in their routine. So touch, I know, is a part of our relationship with our kids. We're touching our kids, we're hugging our kids, but is it built into a routine? Are we routinely on the daily, during specific maybe transitions or during specific times of the day, incorporating touch? Are we making it a part of their routine? Are we, this is when I hold my child, I hug my child. Right here, we do some pressured play. Pressured play can be like wrestling, pillow fight. It can be, it's just kind of that, some of that where you're really almost putting pressure more on the body, which is really good for the brain, really important for them to feed that brain and get some of that feedback that it needs, so that as they come to school, they're not seeking that from peers around them. They're not seeking that touch from everybody close to them. They've gotten some of that bucket filled. So thinking about that, just thinking about your routine and how are you incorporating touch? How are you making sure that's a big part of your routine you're establishing? I think it's one that we forget. When we hear routine, we think about meals, morning routine, sleep, bedtime. But I want you to think about touch and how much you can incorporate that and keep it a very consistent part of your routine. And then there's just some suggestions here on using music, lights, code words, picture schedules, checklists, or visual prompts to really help build independence so that your child is taking more ownership and accountability for their routines and their structure. They're taking more of an active role in being consistent throughout their day and having self-control. Any questions on this? Awesome. Something I think is so important is to remember that these don't always have to be sit-down, boring lectures or trainings or, hey, we're going to work on this. Let's break it down and set a timer and work on it. Those are important, targeting a skill and sitting down at a table and working on it. But so much of this can be taught through play. And like I said, a lot of these things are practiced and naturally embedded in school, but we don't necessarily have the same amount of time during the day because of education curriculum to really utilize play in the way of building these skills. So some ways to build self-control through play are games, puzzles, sports, specifically games with rules. Playing games with rules, making sure those rules are consistent and expected. It doesn't matter if your child is K1-2 or 6th, 7th grade. Those, it's really important that when you sit down and play games as a family, or you sit down and play a game with your child, that you have established rules for that game, and those rules are expected of that child. So if your child is an only child or the oldest and they're kindergarten or 1st grade, it doesn't matter that they're the only ones playing with you. It's still really important and helpful to that child to practice self-control that you require those rules to be followed, right? You require turn taking, and you don't let that child move your guy on the board or roll the dice for you. Like, no, there's a structure to this game. There's a way that we play, and we're going to follow that structure so that that child can practice self-control, but it's through play. It's through a fun way of doing it. So make sure that you're looking at opportunities to use play or activities together to work on these things. It can be fun, and it can be almost like hidden in play activities that your child doesn't realize you're targeting these executive functioning skills. I just wanted to make mention, if you're not aware or maybe you haven't had a clear understanding of what the Movement Center is, this year we have not only a wellness center, which is our break space for kids to go and kind of have a very calming environment to de-escalate or regulate their emotions and get ready to learn again and return to class. We also now have what's called a Movement Center. Our Movement Center is very similar to this picture here. There's specific targeted circuit training stations that have motor skills being targeted and worked on. The reason I put this in here was just simply to let you know that at school we are trying to really implement some interventions to help with impulse control and executive functioning skills. This motor lab or movement center is a really big, exciting intervention this year that we're doing Our K through 2 classes are all accessing it, and then from 3 to 7th grade, that's through teacher referral, kind of based on what they're seeing as far as impulse control in class and motor behavior or invading of space and those kind of things. And so body control is something we're really working on in this motor center, and it's really incredible and a great intervention that we're starting at school. So I just wanted to mention that so you're aware of some neat things that are happening at GWA to target some of these executive functioning skills that are so important in the new research, in modern research. That's it for today. I am so sorry for the tech issues we had today. I'm always willing to help your families individually. So if you want to email me or schedule any sort of Zoom call or meeting, we can always work together to build some programming in your home. Anyone have any questions?